Today we're going to learn about React. Let's see. Steven, do you want to read what's on the screen for us?
Declarative, efficient, and flexible JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It encourages the creation of reusable UI components that prevent data that changes over time.
Okay, so React is declarative, efficient, and flexible. So what does declarative mean? Well, there's declarative and then there's imperative. When we're talking about imperative, we're describing how we do something. And then when we're talking about declarative, it's describing what we want to do. So I will do a fun little skit. Eric, what's your favorite restaurant?
Panda Express.
What is it?
Panda.
Panda Express.
Where you have servers.
You could just pick one also.
Yeah. Sure, Applebee's.
Applebee's? That's the same one from this morning. Okay, cool. All right, you are the host of Applebee's, and your line in this play is, "Welcome to Applebee's." Ready?
Welcome to Applebee's.
Thanks. Davey and I are here for lunch. Can you please grab 2 menus, walk us over to that table, place the menus on the table, explain to us the specials of the day, tell us who our server's going to be, set the menus down, maybe grab some napkins, silverware.
I'm real sloppy.
Yeah, couple more napkins, yes. Place those on the table, tell us our server will be with us shortly, and then walk away and we'll sit down. What do you think that's an example of, declarative or imperative?
Declarative? Or
In-
imperative?
Imperative, yes. So let's try this again.
Welcome to Applebee's.
Thanks, table for 2, please. That's declarative.
Okay.
So in the first example, I'm describing how I wanted Eric to do what I wanted him to do. And in the second example, declarative, I just said what I wanted. Table for 2. Another example is like driving a car. Does everyone know the difference between a manual and an automatic car? Automatic car, get in, put it in drive. That's what I wanted to do, drive. With a manual, I need the clutch, I need to shift gears, start in first gear, go to second. You have to describe how you want that to happen. So today in React, we're going to learn how React is declarative. So here's some code. I have a function. I want it to be called multiply by 3. So I set a variable called multiplied array to an empty array. Then I say, okay, give me a variable I, start it at 0, go the length of the array, add 1 to I each time. Give me a new variable, multiply number, add it to the original array, multiply it by 3, multiply each item in that array by 3, push that new item on. What is this? Is this imperative or declarative? Imperative. Step by step, I'm telling it what to do. That's a lot of code. I could just do that. Yes, exactly. That's declarative. So in other words, a way I remember it is like, it's imperative that I tell them every step along the way and what to do. Declarative, much easier, much shorter code, much more efficient. So React does something, creates something called the virtual DOM. So what it does is instead of redrawing the entire page every time something changes, data changes in your code, it just redraws the part of the code that changes. So another way to say that is it takes a snapshot of the DOM, it creates its own virtual DOM, and every time something changes, it looks at the difference between those two and only redraws the portion of the page that has changed. So also in React, we have something called components. And we have reusable components so that you don't have to write the same code over and over. And we'll see an example of that in a little bit. So for a React application, you only need at a minimum 4 things. So you need an HTML page with at least one empty element on it. You, of course, need the React library, so you'll have to import that. You need 1 or more React components. And then you need a JavaScript call to attach one of those components to the empty HTML element from step 1. Okay, so what are components? So this is just some typical HTML. We've seen this before. We've been writing it the last week. You have a header, H1, H2, unordered list with some nav links. But wouldn't it be nice if we could just write this? So this is a React component. It's a class component. It's called app header. That's the name of the component. It extends from React.component, which basically just means it inherits some specifications. It has a render method on it, which is necessary and required for class components. And then it has some HTML-looking stuff in between its return method. But if you look closely there are a few things in there that is different from just regular HTML. So I'll zoom in here. Does anyone see there's 2 things that are different from just normal HTML that we've been writing? Yes.
The thing with the brackets is that props.name.
Yep. You don't see that in HTML, right? What else? There's one other thing. Look closely. It's kind of hidden. Yes. Right. Class name. Right after that on the next link. So this is called JSX. It's JavaScript and XML. It's a combination of those things. So this .props.name is just JavaScript in between curly braces. And class name is necessary because class is a reserved word. So you see how on the first line it says class app header. That's a class. That's a JavaScript class. And so you can't have that again or else that would be confusing. So we have to call it class name.
They wouldn't know what to do because it's really JavaScript. This is just a syntax extension to JavaScript that lets you write it in this convenient way, but all you're really doing is writing some JavaScript.
Exactly. So that's what Davey's talking about right there. So that H1 is actually React.createElement H1 null. My site is the best site. But it looks like HTML. So this code right here, this JSX, is actually this. And it's actually only the first couple lines of that last code. So you don't want to have to write React.createElement header null, whatever text you want. React.createElement for each thing. It's just a shorter, more concise way. And then it compiles down to JavaScript. So another basic, and something else that React has are props. So if you think of components as functions, just like a function in JavaScript would take arguments, components take props. So they accept arbitrary inputs called props and return React elements describing what should appear on the screen. Yeah.
Is props short for something or is it just called props?
Properties?
It is named that because of properties, but it is not. But they are not called properties. They are called props.
Mm-hmm.
So yes and no. It is named after a longer word, but it is not. We are not substituting for the longer word.
Yeah. So we will call it props throughout class. If you check the documentation, it'll be props. It's props. And it could be anything: strings, numbers, functions, objects, arrays. So if you look at the code on the screen, on the last line, you'll see my component, which is a component, and it has 3 props: alert me, my fave, and name. So the function alert me is being passed in as a prop to the component my component. The Boolean true is being passed through as a prop, the my fave prop. And then the name Emilio is being passed through as a prop. And so if you look on the line where it has the button, there's an anonymous function with this.props.alertme. And then the next line has this.props.name. So basically the values that are being passed into the props are then being called in this JavaScript between the curly braces. So really you're saying my name is Emilio, my favorite Boolean is true. So just like we did in the last slide, you receive props from outside a component and you pass them in. But you can't change those props. You can't change the value of them. They're immutable. So if you do want to change data, you need something called state in React. So again, if a component needs to keep track and modify data, we use state. So state is initialized in a component's constructor function, and then it's modified using the setState method. So here's an example of that. We have a class component named ClickyCounter, and we have a constructor, and this is where we initially set that state. So this dot state equals an object that has a key of count with a value of 0. Then we have a method in that component, update count. And instead of saying this dot state dot count equals 3, if we wanted to change it to 3, let's say, we need to say this dot set state. We need to use set state, because React, the way it works, is it kind of listens for the set state method, and then it knows, okay, something has changed on state. I need to re-render that UI.
So you can't change properties with methods inside of the class. It's like methods can't change properties.
You can change the property if you use set state. So if you have a
props that are passed in, no, you're not supposed to do that. So you can make a copy of them. You can save them off to a local variable and do something with them. But that's not going to force a re-render of the page. That's the key to these things, and that's the same thing with setting state. The whole point is that you just manage your state, and React keeps your UI up to date automatically. But to do that, it has to know when something changes. So it watches for two things. It watches for the props to change on their way in, and it looks for state to get updated through set state. So if you violate either of those things, you can change the values, but it's not going to redraw the page, so your changes won't be reflected.
And then the last thing that we mentioned in the 4 things that you need for a React app is just attaching it to the DOM. So this is something you only have to do once in your application. But if you look, so the first part of this page is your HTML, regular HTML. So it would be like your index.html file. And if you see within the body, there's a div with an ID of root. The next section is where you create a component called app. And then that last line is where you attach it to the DOM. So you have React DOM, you have a render method, and then you're telling React, okay, render the component app and put it where there's an element with the ID of root. And that's how you get it to run your React app. So are there any questions on that part? Davey's going to go into another example here, but that's it. That's all you need for a React app.
Okay, that's all you need, folks. So now your job is to rewrite Slack in its entirety in React. Go.